Hello, everyone. Happy Friday or whatever day that you're watching either this recording or this live webinar. So happy to see you guys and tuning in from all over the place. Awesome stuff. Good stuff. Really happy to see you guys. We've got a couple more people joining, so I'll just give a moment for them to all tune in as we kind of welcome in our space. Today, we're going to be talking about how to attract or align with your desired intimate partner. And the other way that I'd love to just say this, let's say it for what it is, conscious relationships. That's what we're talking about. So regardless if you're in a relationship now or you're wanting to attract a relationship that's a good fit for you, these are all topics that we're going to be kind of embodied and covered over the next 60 minutes together. So as you guys know, I'll be sharing screen. I would love to have your cameras on just because I can interact with you from the sidebar. It's super helpful for me to just ensure that I'm connected with you. But if you guys have work or if you're, not wanting to, not comfortable turning your camera on, that's totally fine too. So let's get started. You guys just let me know if you have any issues with sound or seeing my screen at any point. And I'm happy to just pause and make adjustments. And then next, I'm a huge proponent of the chat. So if you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation or questions you have as I move through this, please do put them in the chat so we can kind of make this a little bit more interactive and have the opportunity and the experience of connecting with each other in real time with some of the topics that come up. This is a really big conversation. So I want you to know that there might be some movement of energy within you as you experience some of the information here, and just welcome that in and give yourself a chance to digest that because you're in a safe space to do that. So first, we're learning about deep partnership and how to either attract the right person into your life or become better attuned with your current partner. Take accountability for the area of your life that can fast track your growth. Be a mirror that offers a healthier quality of life through divine connection. This is like one of my favorite topics, you guys. I'm so happy we get to do this together. And most of our people, yes. Okay, awesome, cool. All right, so let's begin. Introduction. Who am I? I know most of you on this call already know me very well, but for anyone watching the recording or anybody that's new to the community, my name is Ashley, and I've been leading, teaching, practicing in this work for a little over 10 years now. I started as a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher, and it started evolving to me studying in somatic experiencing. Now I'm studying more yoga and psychology and psychotherapy. A lot of the realms that I work with are also yoga therapy. So I lead 200-hour yoga teacher trainings with meditation and breath work. I also offer these webinars, live trainings. I do a mentorship program where I create a safe space for everyone to connect once a week on a specific topic, which the topic that we're talking about today actually pertains to our next round of mentorship, which I'm so excited about. So yeah, and if you guys have any questions or want any more information, I'm happy to connect with you offline, just more on my background, but I want to jump into the content because I feel like that's what we're all here for. So grounding, let's go ahead and ground ourselves. Any of you that are driving, obviously, please keep your eyes open. But if you're seated at your computer or at home, just ground your sitting bones and close your eyes and just take a moment to drop into your body. Take a big breath in. Open your mouth, exhale, and cleanse out your energy. Continue a few more cycles of breath. They could be just like the one you did, or maybe a little bit softer if you need. And notice your state shift a little bit. The way we best receive information is by being present and receptive. So give yourself the benefit of the doubt of what it means to receive in this moment. Regardless if this is a conversation you've been having for a long time or a pain point in your life, or maybe something you're excited to learn more about, there's so much opportunity right here, right now, for us to all take something away that we didn't know before. So allow your guard to come down and your heart to become more open to how you can show up differently in the world in relation to intimate partnership. Breathing in, big breath out. And in your time, you can begin to blink your eyes open, just finding yourself right back in our space together. Maybe just in a little different space than when you first got here. Cool. So I'll give you guys a little bit of background on my story and my experience with this topic personally, because as you know, I'm a super vulnerable and open person. I like to share almost all the details of my life because I find that it's easier to connect for me with leaders and teachers who I know more about their humanness. One of the things that I've been studying a lot too is like this guru concept of how we put certain people on pedestals. And then when we see certain parts of them that we like or don't like, it creates a lot of challenges with our character and being able to learn from them. So I find that actually every single person and everything in your life, every situation, every experience you have could be your guru, could be your teacher. So the more we kind of level the playing field, the more interactions we can have with each other on a relatable space instead of thinking that we need to go learn something outside of ourselves. Like everything I'm going to share with you, if you feel triggered or connected or any type of way about it, it's because it's something within you that you also have access to. So I'm not your source of information. You are. I'm just reminding you of everything you already have inside. So I had a pretty rough go with intimate partnership in my younger years. That was my source of feeling any type of feeling seen. And so as I've started to work through a lot of stuff on my own, feeling seen has always been a big thing for me. Feeling acknowledged, feeling recognized was always the most important kind of core wound that I had. And within that core wound, the way that I worked to get my needs met was to feel seen, specifically in intimate relationship, because it's a fast track to connection, right? Like intimacy puts you in deep, direct connection with source and spirit really, really fast, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's in the right way or for the right reasons. So, of course, the way that I operated in this conversation was using my body to get attention, trying to hook, line, and sinker guys that I was dating by like having sex with them really early on and using that as a way to like get them to want to date me or stay with me or be with me based on my upbringing and my trauma. I heard lots of confusing and conflicting messages growing up. My parents were separated when I was 2 and their divorce took 10 years. So it was like a lot of brutal fighting. And I feel attacked. I understand. All of the models that I saw of healthy relationships were not very healthy at all. I saw them fighting a lot, and it was always like, what's mine and what's mine. It wasn't like what's ours. So the family unit conversation wasn't really present much. And my mom's primary language was find someone who will never leave you because your dad left. And then my dad's primary language was I watched my parents fight until I was like 25 years old when they finally got divorced, and they would have been happier separated. So my core language around relationship was like, find someone who won't leave, find someone who won't leave, and do whatever you need to do to make sure that will happen. So that manifested in the way I showed up in my dating life as I became a young adult, and the way that I would operate in relationship and the things that I would look for in relationship. And then, ironically, because my parents were divorced, I got the message, find someone that will never leave, but also when it gets hard, bail. So like when I finally did get the right partnership, my go-to autopilot nervous system reaction was like, fuck this, I'm out. Like, how do I get out of here as fast as possible? Because it's hard. And because it's hard, it means that because it's hard, it means it's not the right fit. Like, because something's being triggered within me, this is not the right fit. So what that means is that that person's the wrong person for me, and that I need to go find love somewhere else because a different person wouldn't have these behaviors and tendencies, and I would be happier somewhere else, because partnerships mean like it should be easy and you should be so in love and everything should be so good. And so that was kind of like my track record of manifesting interesting partners, and I ended up in all kinds of abusive relationships. Like, I mean, my first sexual encounter was, an unwanted sexual abuse. And then from there, I moved from that place of like, oh, my body, I don't value my body because no one else did. So now I'm going to utilize that source of information. And, I ended up with my first intimate partner was extremely abusive. He was like in and out of jail and like was hooking up with other girls. And I just like didn't understand how to value myself through that, because I thought, again, like as long as they keep coming back, it's okay, because that was my primary programming and I felt seen in the space with him. So those things were so much more important than true healthy love that allowed me to grow. So in that moment, the things that I needed to grow through were just showing up in partnership that was just not a good fit and not healthy for me. And that was okay for that season of my life, if you will. So fast forward, 22 years old, and I met my fiance. We met in a bar, and I was actually like during my party stages, but I do remember something within me shifting where I was like, okay, I'm going to go from always looking at what's wrong with the guys that I'm dating around me to showing up to guys that I'm dating, accepting them wholly and fully instead of nitpicking at what was wrong or what was right. And so when I met Chad, I also had like a few other relationships that I was willing to explore in that same way. However, like it was divine intervention where, when I met Chad, he was the person that kind of stepped up and was like, I, want to continue to explore this with you and see where this goes. He's the first person that I dated that wasn't an avoidant attachment style or insecure attachment style, meaning like he's always had a very secure attachment style. Like he doesn't chase after me when I run away, or he doesn't make me feel insecure. He's calm and collected. He can kind of be in himself when I'm kind of was frantically moving in circles in the beginning of our relationship. And that was really different for me. Like I was kind of like, how could you just sit there? Like I was not familiar with a secure attachment style bond, which by the way, we'll talk about this on our mentorship program, but attachment styles can change. I was insecure attached for a very long time. It was always like, why don't you love me? And where are you? And why don't you show up for me? And through the nourishing relationship I have right now, even though it's not always good all the time and like so rainbows and butterflies, I do have a more secure attachment style now, meaning like I have a better way of being okay on my own, regardless of that, because of the interaction in the relationship and what that's taught me. So yeah, and even my partnership now, we've been together for 8 years, and I would say the last year and a half has been the deepest, most profound growth we've had in our entire relationship. But I kind of had to really go through that, like, fuck you, I'm leaving. Okay, I'm staying, never leave, whole thing of, is this right or is this wrong? And evolution personally within me to say, okay, like, what is this here to teach me? And why is it that I want to run? What am I running from that I'm going to just meet somewhere else? So through that push and pull, like any relationship, any of you know, regardless if you've had healthy or unhealthy relationships, you know that there is stuff that comes with it. But it's like, what kind of stuff? What is it there to teach you? Is it there for a season or is it there for a lifetime? Is it there for, the process of you being able to grow in this very moment and then move on? Or is it there so that both of you grow? Is it there so you grow apart? But giving ourselves the opportunity to have those internal questions is a huge part of growth and mastering this area, which I don't know that anyone's mastered it, but I freaking hope that one day we can be a little bit more attuned to what it looks like to get even better at this area. Okay, that's my stuff. Of course, again, questions are welcome, guys. I want to hear from any of you, like maybe if you have any shares, anything just resonated with you. Do you have questions up front? And what do you want to learn out of this program today? You can unmute yourself and just go for it.
Hi.
Hi.
So, okay. So thank you, number one, for sharing that, because so many things and triggers popping on that, and seeing, like, for me, now I dated someone for a moment and I had to step back from that because a lot of the things that you just brought up, the unhealthy attachment, things like that, like were signals for me. And at the same time, I was afraid, was I being too hard on myself or that person too? So being able to differentiate, is it a sign or is it a true red flag to really pay attention to, you know? And also being clear with myself of like, am I really ready even to go into like even dating? Because I had to ask myself like, okay, if these things are coming up, is it him or is it me? This is the best way to put it.
The answer is that it's always both, right? Like everything that we do is co-created, everything. And so here's like a crazy stat I'll share with you guys. I learned this in my 300 hour, but it's said that 30%, actually, let me scratch that and back up. Most people that go to couples therapy because they want their partner to get healthier. They're not there for like themselves. They want their person to go to therapy and they won't. So they're like, let's go together. 30% of couples say that it's actually helpful, whereas 75% of individual people say that their individual therapy is better for their relationship. And so we'll go into that more, but everything is co-created. So it starts with how we show up into the space versus how I can make you do this and you can make me do this so that we satisfy our needs and our thorns so that we don't get pissed off or triggered. It's like, for those of you that have read Untethered Soul, it talks a lot about padding up our thorn, meaning like, I'm going to put frame around this so that nothing hurts me and that I can live my life happy and peaceful. Whereas like, we all know that happy and peaceful comes from actually digging into the darkness, because without darkness, there is no light. And we'll talk about polarity here today too. So thank you so much for sharing. Let's talk about this. This is massive. Our capacity to give and receive love is completely based on how deeply we truly love ourselves. So the recognition of like oneself, myself, I have value, I have something to offer, I have something to give, I deeply have compassion for myself, I care about myself, I nurture myself, I slow down when I feel like I'm about to get to a place of burnout, or I'm going to do nice things for myself. I'm going to drink the bottle of a nice wine. I'm going to like get fresh sheets and fluff them up. Like, how do you expect yourself to be in interaction with another person in that way if you don't know how to do it for you? And I find like the happiest people in the world are people that could go sit down at a restaurant by themselves or go to a movie by themselves and just like kick it. Or people that take themselves on a spa day, or they like actually do things that are really kind and loving towards themselves. That type of person is much more apt to give and receive love than someone who is blocked in that area, meaning they're unwilling to nourish themselves in some way. Because you can't give and receive something that you can't identify, you don't know yet within you. And again, please feel free to add questions and thoughts. There's a lot here. Okay, so here's the big one. We talked about this a little bit this morning in our meditation. When we look at intimate partnerships, we have to backtrack and zoom out and say, what was my model of partnership like growing up? Now, something I'd like to add here too is that oftentimes when you look at our subconscious's role is to protect us. So if you don't remember a lot from your childhood, or you don't remember a lot of the experience of the models of relationships you have, oftentimes your subconscious is saying, I'm going to block this memory out right now because I don't think you're in an equipped enough place to handle processing it, which is a good thing, right? Like I have some very distinct memories, but there's a lot I don't remember. And as I practice meditation, as I lean into personal work, as I continue to do my self-study, my Ishvara, or rather my Svadhyaya, that puts me in a more open and receptive place to receive memories in a way that is like so kind and loving. For example, the other day I was meditating and I had a full tour of my entire elementary school in my mind. And I was like, holy shit, I didn't even, the bathroom in the back auditorium of the school plays, the hallways, like, and when I scanned through walking through my elementary school, I was like, I spent 6 years at this place of my most formative years. I was there from like 4 or 5 years old to 10 or 11 years old. Like those are really important years. And when I scanned through, I was like, oh, I remember when we went up to that ledge and we all had to like encase an egg in like as much as we could to protect it and then drop it to see if it would fall. So whoever had like the egg that didn't drop or didn't break when it dropped, like that was the person that won the contest. Or like I remember being in the backstage of the auditorium and we had school plays and like I always felt so sad because my mom wanted me to have the lead for the school play, but I never wanted that for myself. But like I remember having like a background or a side part and I felt disappointment from her even though it wasn't something I wanted. And it was like all these things started coming back to me just from that memory, but I hadn't thought about that place in years, right? So if we look back into our history, there is so much wealth of wisdom and knowledge there that can give us insight into why and how we operate in the way that we do now. And so our upbringing, our early home life, our familial relationships and interactions shaped our understanding of how to give and receive love. Meaning if you saw the love between your parents in a very interesting, aggressive or passive aggressive way, maybe that like brought things up for you or that showed you that that's how you're supposed to show up. Excuse me. Considering the way your parents loved and gave love and received love from you, each of them individually, your caretakers, your primary caretakers, that's really intense too. Like when I think back, like there was so much there. There was so much there of, was I received when I offered love? When did I get noticed the most? When did I get acknowledged the most? What things developed within me that made me react or respond or shut down in certain ways? So understanding our core wounds is incredibly important. And so let me break that down a little bit more. And this is integrative body psychotherapy. This is where my mentor and facilitator for my 300 hour, this is her background. She talks about this a lot. And basically there's your family story, like the origin of everything that happened. Were you with a single mom? Were you with a single dad? Were your parents divorced? Were they together? Were you raised by a caretaker? Were there grandparents that lived in the house? How many kids were there? Like my fiance is one of 5. I could not even imagine. Like I just had my brother and it was already a lot. So all of these elements play into how much energy was available to you based on your needs as a child. Okay. And again, not wrong or right, something to be observant of. And so when you look back and you see kind of like what you had access to, and then also if your parents, for example, had the capacity, the emotional capacity to give you what you needed. So we all had needs that were met and we all have needs that weren't met. And then if we look at the needs that weren't met, those were imprinted as oftentimes either you're unworthy of getting this need met because as an infant you don't know how to make sense of that, like I'm crying and I need something, or maybe as a toddler you can't express yourself yet, or maybe at 4 years old you feel an abundance of emotion and your parent couldn't handle that or hold space for that, like whatever it was, that unmet need was met with you being like, oh, am I enough for this? Do I deserve this? And then that need, in that presence of that unmet need, a child will shapeshift their behavior to try to get the parent to meet their need, which is kind of like a automatic reverse manipulation. They'll just be like, I need to change my need and abandon myself so that my parent feels okay enough to meet my need. And that's kind of where the self-abandonment starts, is I'm not going to show up for myself in this moment as this tiny child because like, yes, I need this need met, but it'll only be met if that parent changes or that caretaker changes. So when we change for that, we learn at an early age to abandon what we need. And then within that develops a core wound. So it's like your core story of the very thing that is your deepest, darkest thing. Some of us in teacher training have done the exercise where we go, what are you afraid of? 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 And we go deeper, deeper, deeper. And then when you start digging, you're like, holy shit, it's not being heard, or it's not being seen, or it's being abandoned, or it's being left. Like that's your core wound. And so, holy shit, when we feel triggered anywhere in our life right now, it's rubbing up against our core wound. So like I could be triggered by one thing and you could be triggered by something totally different. But if we got granular enough, we would see that that trigger actually has to do with something way bigger that's a core wound. Because the thing that you're triggered about, I'd look at and I'd be like, oh, that's not a big deal. Like I'd be fine in that situation, and vice versa. So we're like, oh my God, why does that piss me off? And it's like, it wouldn't piss someone else off because that's not their core wound. However, we're all deeply triggered at some level, at some point in our life, some of us more often than others. But the trigger, that's why the trigger is like the nag of like, hey, you want to deal with this now? Hey, you want to investigate this now? And it's going to keep coming up until you do. It's going to keep coming up, keep coming up, keep coming up, right? And so what happens with our core wounds is that when the need is not met, we develop what's called a character style. And in that character style, there's coping mechanisms of how we show up to it. So maybe it's shutting down, it's cutting off, it's being a no person, like everything is always a no, and so on and so forth. There's like a lot of different character styles that we'll develop into, but that's kind of like our go-to to protect ourselves when we're triggered. That's why you have different trigger responses. Okay. Here's where it gets really tricky. Actually, not yet. It's going to get tricky soon. Okay, so your core self is deeply lovable, deserving, worthy, and beautiful. And you know that. You know the innocence about yourself deeply. You know that like the essence of your soul, the Atman, meaning like the most specific, granular version of you is like deeply lovable. And that's why when things don't go your way or you feel triggered, you're like, why can't I feel better? Like the essence of us is good and wants to love and be loved, just at the core level, right? Our true nature and our true self is spirit. And we're all one little drop of the ocean of consciousness. So like if we're all one little baby drop from an ocean that comes all from the same place, which is source, we are whole as we are. Like the nature of who you are, like when you're feeling blissed out and happy, you're like, I have everything I need right now. And it's not because you're freaking balling out with $1 million and like all millions of dollars. I guess $1 million isn't much these days, but balling out, like everything's going your way. You've got a great car. You've got like your career's good. Your relationship's good. Like those things don't often point us to ourselves. It's like the deeper, truer bliss things. And so when we're in that bliss space, we're whole and complete. We have everything we need. And what that means is that our cup is full and we're giving of the overflow of the full cup into life, into relationships, into partnerships, everything else. But in the context of intimate partnership, let's go there. When we are connected to our bliss body, our core self, not our core wound, because by the way, the core wound is a lie. We created that lie. We decided I'm going to lie to myself to tell myself that I don't deserve whatever the fuck my needs were and like they were never met, right? That's a lie. But when we're connected to the core self, we're in the presence of wholeness and we can deeply give to another from a place of selflessness. Meaning relationships should be completely of service and generosity. And we're going to come back to this again, but like we're so in a place of what can I get from someone else? But the true essence of deep partnership, intimate, conscious relationship is how can I deeply make this person way better than they are right now? Because you're already whole. You're not operating from core wound, you're operating from core self. Okay. But dun dun dun, we're here to evolve, so it never goes that way. Right? We got to kind of come back into like truth and reality. Like, let's get back down to earth since we're in our freaking higher chakras right now. If we're here to evolve, relationships, intimate relationships, or lack thereof, meaning if there's no relationship present, you're like, where's my person, right? They give us a mirror into our core wounds. So those relationships show up with all the triggers in play. It's just you don't get to see them until you really get to know the person, which we'll talk about why in a little bit. They show up with all the deep, the dark, to be like, here's your shit. I'm going to rub up against you. I'm going to trigger you. I'm going to give you all the reasons why you must go into yourself deeper. What is the purpose of this? Okay. So when we're disconnected from source, we often are like, oh, it's them, right? It's that person. I haven't met the right person because like they're not out there, dating apps suck, or maybe I keep meeting someone and it's just not a good fit. After like a year, I realize it's falling apart. I don't know how to stay, which by the way that our culture has created like so much challenge for us to be able to actually evolve. Like not only are we up against normal human psychosis, we're also up against this immediate culture of like swiping for fucking relationships, like all of that other stuff, it creates so much more work on the back end of how you can actually find the person that you're supposed to find, right? Like you're going to find the person that's going to put your shit on blast, or you're going to find a lack of person that's not going to put your shit on blast and have to go inside either way. Yes, Katie, thank you for that. And I'm going to say that too out loud so everyone on the recording can hear it. Katie added, side note, the mirror thing, it's not that they're the same as you. It's that they show you where your opportunities for growth are. Exactly. And remind me to revisit that if I don't, because we're going to talk about that in mirroring and how the filters happen through our brain and how that all kind of ties together. How do you support the partner in being and feeling their best without pushing, teaching, seeming like you want to change them? To love them through and show their blind spots, like you're saying, in service, and feel fine to walk a line. The difference that makes the difference is attachment. How attached are you to their way of being? Because like if it's their growth process, it really doesn't matter for you. But if you're not coming from a whole place, then you're attached. So you're connected to your core wound by wanting to change them in the first place. And this goes back to our conversation about, you know, do you want, you can't control how they love, but you can decide if you want to participate in how they love, which will come into Danae too. And if you avoid it, it shows up in the next person. Yes. By the way, Ram Dass does have like a lecture on relationships. I think it's called On Relationships. It's an audiobook. It's really freaking awesome too. Okay. So when we have relationships, it's easy to point fingers at our partners or at people that we're dating and share the things we don't like about them because it opts us out of having to look at what it's bringing up for us. Okay. Ram Dass's theory on relationships is mirrors and why we shatter when the relationship ends. Yeah. Okay. I'll go into that right now, Car. Thanks for that reminder. I mean, this is so in alignment with everything we're talking about, but like when we are in relationship with someone, and I think most of us have been through breakups or even breakups in friendship, for those of you that maybe haven't been through like a full breakup in intimate partnership, but same. When we are in relationship or in friendship deeply, we are investing in that person, meaning we're seeing in them what we don't have within us because we're showing up splintered. And so when we show up splintered or disconnected from core self, we come into a relationship and we utilize that person's things to fill the holes within us. And so we co-identify or codependently connect with someone in the way that they have everything it is that we need. So that's why when breakups happen, again, friendship, partnership, whatever, we feel like our life is over. That's why breakups are like the hardest fucking thing anyone's ever been through in their entire life, because it's almost as if a part of ourselves is dead and dying and grieving because we're like, oh, I no longer have access to the lack that was filled by someone else. So now I'm back with the lack. And so I just want to go and fill that with something else and go and fill that with something else. Like anyone that's been through a breakup has been like, oh, I just need to find someone else that won't do this, but they'll do that. So we're like automatically trying to get like, let me find the thing that will do that better instead of actually finding the thing within us that's the most necessary. Thanks for that. Okay, so let's start with you are responsible, you are accountable. We have this idea that if that person does this, or if this person changes, or something outside of us happens differently, then it will give us permission to be okay to take accountability for the issues that are present. But similar to chemistry, which we've seen here, and you guys have heard me use this example before, when you mix two things together, two elements together, they make a certain type of component or potion, right? But if you change one of the elements and you put it in, that potion will never be the same. It can't. So for those of us that are saying, once the right person shows up, or once that person shows up differently, then I'll be okay. Right? It's Marianne Williamson's quote is that ego says, once everything falls into place, I'll be at peace. Spirit says, once I find peace, everything will fall into place. So instead of waiting for someone else or something else outside of us to take on the initiative to change. We have agency to be able to create shift in our relationship or in attracting the right relationship now. Like whatever's showing up for you is because of the way you're showing up. Whatever's showing up for you is showing up because of how you're showing up. So not having a partner, not having the right partner, et cetera, like these are all the way that you have shown up, 100%. I know that's sometimes a really difficult concept. Okay, so let's talk about the purpose of intimate relationship. It's not to make babies, even though that's fun too. It's not to have someone that you can hold hands with and be romantic in the movies. It's not someone that you get the opportunity to like cook with, even though all those things are super fun. It's not so you're not lonely. It's so that you can grow. That's the only reason. And when you start utilizing your intimate relationship as an opportunity for you to get bigger and better at being yourself and evolve, you no longer circle around the same issues over and over because you're taking accountability for that evolution. Is this person here to teach me better boundaries? Is this person here to teach me about my, my core wound? Is this person here to teach me that I am enough regardless of how they show up? Like whatever's being triggered within you, that's what they're here to teach you. Carolyn Miss says a soulmate is the person who makes your soul grow the most. And let's be honest, this is definitely not just partnership because I have lots of soulmates in my life, like truly. My female relationships are my deepest soulmates, to be honest. Now, coming back to this conversation about the reflection, right? So here's what happens in NLP. If those of you that were on our Is It Me or Is It How I Was Raised webinar, we talked about how the brain operates and works, and our subconscious wants to keep us safe. So it looks at situations and circumstances around us and it says, I need to be safe. So how can I see this situation in a way that resonates with my belief system? With all the things I was programmed to believe, including my core wounds. So as Katie said, we're not looking at the reflection of ourselves. We're looking based on how our systems have organized safety through that lens and then projecting what do we think is the best on the environment around us. Okay. So if you're in a relationship, or let's just start with if you're in a relationship and you feel like you're constantly needing to control your partner or tell them what to do, or you feel like they're crossing boundaries with other women or whatever that is, like you're looking based on a filter that you've created. Because if the truth and the evidence was that that person is not loyal or trustworthy or whatever, like that would be a different conversation. But when we've created this narrative or even attracted them from our core wound of like not enoughness, we are looking through that lens. So whatever it is that we're looking at, we have projected out into the world. So it's like changing that narrative and being like, oh, actually they are trustworthy. Actually, I know that they're safe and in integrity. And then letting that go and seeing how fast that story dissipates, you can actually see evidence of if it's true or not from a neutral space instead of looking through the lens of your core wound. Same with people that are like looking for a relationship. Like I was on Instagram earlier and I saw an Overheard LA about, is dating hard in LA? And they were interviewing all these people like on Runyon and stuff. And everyone's like, yeah, it's so hard. Yeah, it sucks. Blah, blah, blah. And then this one guy was like, I'm a dating coach. You just have to find the right person. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like ridiculous. I understand, obviously not because I'm doing that right now, dating in LA, but if you are not attracting, like you can meet someone literally anywhere. But are you walking in with the core wound of relationships are unsafe, unhealthy? Are you walking in with blocks in the way that you show up? Are you walking in with an idea about how something is supposed to look without looking at all the opportunities of how it could look? Is the projection of your idea of relationships blocking you from actually finding someone because you're instead just looking at your framework and idea subconsciously, unconsciously of what you think it should be? Is there a fine line through where people are crossing a boundary, for example, liking a girl's bikini photo? Like, what is the boundary and where is it our insecurity versus their disloyalty? I mean, I can't really give you an answer for this because like my partner doesn't do that. And like, maybe that's based on his stuff, but like, I only attracted partners that would do that in the past. My partner now has a secure attachment style and like always says to me, like, I would never do anything to make you feel uncomfortable. So I feel like communication is really important, like saying, hey, it makes me uncomfortable when you do that. Do you mind not doing that? And if they have a problem with it, like maybe it's something bigger. You know
I
what I
guess
mean?
my question is more like why am I uncomfortable? Like I always like try to bring it back to me. Like, is it me that's the problem if I'm uncomfortable with that? Like I'm obviously insecure about something. You know what I mean? Like I guess I'm trying to figure out. I guess it's case by
Yeah,
case, but
of course. And it is super layered 100%. Like, for example, if Chad liked your bikini photo, I wouldn't trip because like I deeply know you guys have like a friendship or a relationship, and he probably would like your photo and I wouldn't care. But if it was like a random person that they didn't know, like what is their intention, you know?
yeah, I guess it is very layered and like circumstance and the context is always different.
And this is where your feminine energy is important, to be vulnerable in that and to actually communicate, because it invites in more deeper connection and intimate relationship. Because here we are so often being like, oh, like that makes me uncomfortable, so maybe it's me. Like, yes, I commend you on wanting to do work on yourself, but part of that work on yourself is like, if this makes me feel insecure, like what would communicating and exposing that insecurity do for my growth? Wow, that would be a totally new perspective. Like, what if I shared that in partnership?
So true, because that's like what I would avoid. I'd be like, oh, this bothers me. I'm just gonna let it eat me alive inside and not say a word about it because it's my problem. But that makes
Because
sense.
there's shame and embarrassment in that. You're like, why are you looking at someone else? You should be looking at me. And where does that hit your core wound
Yeah.
of like maybe wanting to be seen or chosen, or I don't know, like only you know that. And Neela, for you saying I communicated that before and said I look jealous, it's like, where does the communication come from? What's the tone? How specifically is it framed? What is the intention behind it? Is it accusatory? Is it shaming someone? Is it making them feel bad about something they did, about, versus making it about you? And you're like, hey, I'm feeling insecure by this, and I know that you doing this has no deeper intention, and there's nothing else here that you would cross an integrity boundary. I'm in this space and this is my stuff and I'm owning it, but I want to share with you because I deeply care about being vulnerable and feminine and in that space of like willfulness to connect through my heart, versus like, why the fuck would you like someone's photo? Like it's like totally different energy, which comes down to like, how emotionally charged are you in the moment that you're sharing something? Because usually we share something from a place of intensity. Yeah, man, you guys are, I love, keep going off on the chat. I love it. Okay, this is huge, you guys. This is so big. This is everything. The illusion of love. Okay. When we fall in love and we're like, oh my God, this guy's so great, or this chick's so great, like, oh my God, I'm in love, we project onto them attributes that we want them to have in hopes that they will be that. So when you hear people say, like, oh, you're not seeing the red flags, it's because you are literally meeting someone and your body is releasing a chemical called phenylethylamine, and that is the love drug. It's part of our happy hormones. So it takes 6 to 24 months for that drug to dissipate out of your body and relationship and actually see through to the person. And so a lot of times you'll see relationships fail after 6 to 24 months because people are like, oh, they aren't who I thought they were. No, they're not who you projected onto to imagine that they were some fairy tale person that you thought would fill your cup. So real conscious relationship works actually when you see the person for who they are and not for the version you want them to be based on your dating interaction with them. And so here's where it gets interesting, is that like, if you see someone and you're like, oh, they're super wounded, like, but I'm 6 months in this, I'm a year, I'm 2 years in this, and I'm in love, but then there's this like vicious cycle. How is it that you can zoom out into compassion of like, what are they working through? How can my relationship with them serve them to grow? And what am I triggered by? Not, oh, this doesn't work. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. Like, it is a breeding ground for growth. So for example, if you're in a relationship where you see someone you love in a relationship and you're like, oh my God, can't they see this? Just because you see it doesn't mean it's your work to do. So someone's literally inside of an opportunity, or you're inside of an opportunity to grow and to shift something that is up for you in that moment. Your karmic wounds are being activated so that you can grow. The only reason why you're in a relationship is to grow. So to think that this not being the right fit, I need to go find it somewhere else because it's hard, because it's not fitting or working, that could be a possibility for you to reframe it all together and say, how can I learn from this experience? How can I reflect this back into myself? Why is this coming up for me? So we're no longer projecting what we think onto the experience with someone else. Yes. And then even when you're watching friends that you love and you're like, oh my God, everyone's blinded. Why are you even triggered by their growth process? Like literally who they fuck doesn't matter to you. Like granted, you might need to sit there with open arms and receive them when they're crying and things don't go their way or blah, 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 blah. But like you could hold space for people to grow. I understand that you care about them, but trying to get them to do something different based on something you see versus what they see is basically like robbing them of their chance to grow. They're going to be in the cycle regardless of what you say. So do you want to participate in loving them or not? Their cycle is not for you. And your cycle is for you. So why are we diverting onto them when we could just be focusing on ourselves in intimate relationship, you know? Shit's fucking real. Here we go. Passion versus love. This is a big one. Passion is important, but passion is not love. Passion has to be present in love, right? But passion will change, meaning sometimes it will be this most exciting, incredible thing, but love is through. Like I could literally want to like fucking kick Chad in the balls, but I still love him. Like I could be like, why are you? But I still love you. I still love you. And that's the difference. And so many of us that chase passion, we're like, oh my God, it's so great. That's that love drug thing. It's the, I don't understand why you're like this. That is actually the thing that is the key to our evolution. But so many of us are like, oh my God, it's not fun anymore. We used to go on all these dates. So fuck this. I'm out. Our relationship's stale, blah, blah, blah. Like it's not, we fell out of love. No, you fell out of passion and it will come back again. There's things you can do to make it come back again, right? A change in passion does not equal a change in love. And so let me just like zoom out right now with you guys and get real. Every single relationship you ever have and ever will have, ever had, period. One of the two of you will either leave or die. Relationships are not forever. They might be for this lifetime, but they're not forever. So one of you will no longer be, okay? This creates a melodrama, like scarcity, like Romeo and Juliet, like, oh my God, like this freaking crazy attachment that we have of like, oh, there's not enoughness. So I'm going to make it seem like this partner is okay right now for me, or I'm going to project my shit on them, or I'm going to run from this because I don't want to deal with heartache or heartbreak later. And the next thing here too is like, we'll deem, and this is not in a bad way, but like no one's special. Every single person is an assignment, but no one is special. Meaning like if this assignment doesn't work for you and you're like, fuck this, you're going to find the assignment somewhere else because it's not about the person. It's about the work you're supposed to do. Did you guys catch that? You're not in relationship with a person. You're in relationship with the work you're supposed to do. So if you run from that work, it's going to show up every single place that you go. So like, it doesn't matter if it's the like freaking blue-eyed long-haired dude or like the freaking bartender or like it's going to show up no matter what. Same. And it's tricky because it'll present differently in the beginning. And you're like, you're so different from my ex, but like, it's going to be the same. Because the work you have to do is the work you have to do based on, yes, your core issues, your core wounds. So like, learn yourself, right? Every single person that you date is like, again, if someone's going to leave or die, no matter what, everyone's in some way replaceable. Meaning like, if you put this person on a pedestal and you're like, there's no one will ever be like this person ever again. It's like, no, the work will continue. And if we're all one drop out of the same source, they are you and you are them. And like, so is everyone else. So trying to spiritually bypass our work by being like, another person will present something different. Another person won't show up this way. Guess what? You're still the same bitch. You know, like you're still the same person. You're still showing up with the same tendencies and the same core issues. So this is our work. We're going to talk about 2 different types of love. And this is ego love or immature love, if you will. What can I get? Ego love tries to change the other person. I could spend an entire day on just these, you guys. Sees relationship or marriage as a place to get, meaning I have to go get something so my life is complete. Okay. Once I'm married, I'm going to be whole and happy and full. Sees creates conflict over wants and needs, meaning I want you to be a certain way or I have needs, and then creates an issue out of it. Views passion as more important than love. Discontent with disappointments over unmet expectations, meaning like you're not okay because you have expectations of the way someone's going to be. Victim mentality, blaming the other, like it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault, versus taking responsibility. Operates out of fear or scarcity. Sees unloving behavior as a reason to go into fight or flight versus like it's just happening, right? Holds grudges and complaints, meaning like an arsenal, you know, when you're like, well, you never did this, right? That's fun. Keeps fears and resentments alive, spinning out. Judges differences and tries to change the partner to be like oneself. Like the way I operate is better than you, so you need to be like me. Sees partner as a source of happiness or cause of happiness. No one can give you what you can only give you. So no matter what's going on in their world, you can literally have an amazing experience of reality. Shit, I know it's hard, but like for real. Mature love, what can I give? Not what can I get? What can I give? Okay. Sees relationship as a place to practice unconditional love, a place for spiritual growth, a place for emotional and personal development. I know you guys, by the way, I know that this sounds selfish. I do, because I think our culture conditions us that we're supposed to like be in partnership where you lean on each other and they fill this hole and you fill that hole and da, 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 da. No. Partnership is we are both whole people and we are choosing this together to be greater in the world. Okay. Looks for ways to contribute to partners' growth and happiness, meaning like I want to make you the best version of you. So how can I serve? How can I serve my partner? How can I contribute to my partner's growth? Viewing love as more important than passion, meaning like I'm committed to this deeply. Accepting your partner for who they are right now, unconditionally. Letting go of control and the need to be right, big one. Seeing the source of happiness from love within or from God or spirit, like plugging into God rather than someone else who defines your happiness. Like when we're in a shit show over here, I'm like, I meditate, I go to my sadhana, I go to my practice because I'm like, I already have everything I need. I already have everything I need. I already have everything I need. Intend for peace above all else. Is this thought, word, or action going to lead to more peace? That's big. Because man, that like strips you of your ego. Like, no, if it's not going to create peace, send it, drop it. We're done. Viewing unloving behavior as an opportunity to extend love. Accept, respect, and honor differences, right? So we're not making someone wrong because they're different than us. Consciously create a joyful and positive attitude. Operate from love and become the agent of change and cleaning up your side of the street, right? This is like the chemical components. I'm responsible because if I show up in my responsible behavior of like taking accountability, everything will change because of that. I know that if I change, this whole thing will change. Okay, let's talk polarity. This is a necessity for relationship, meaning if you don't have two opposite ends, the charge is not the same. So just like batteries, there's a positive and a negative side of the battery. And if they're not placed in the correct way, or magnets, there's two different charges that come together. There has to be polarity. And we started with that by talking about how we just like want the light. We want our relationship to be good and fun and fancy and loving and romantic all the time. However, if there isn't a balance between masculine and feminine energies, and I don't mean male, female, I mean masculine, feminine, two separate energies, there is no polarity. So there is no attraction, meaning there's nothing that's keeping you to come back together. Okay. And so in that polarity, the masculine and feminine energy, you can sometimes as a female become masculine, and the man can sometimes be as a male feminine. Those two roles can switch and then revert. However, everyone has a true core. Those of you that worked with Danae with me know this. Those of you that have a true core of who you are, you're usually more masculine dominant or feminine dominant. Again, this is not gender specific. It's just energy specific. Okay. Love you, Sam. Have a great evening over there. And so this diagram, we're not going to go into like all the cross references of this because this is like a very complicated concept, but I just want you guys to take a look. I'll read them really quick so you understand which one you're generally operating in, because that impacts your relationships too. Healthy masculine creates safety, witnesses without judgment, holds space, present without a goal, integrity and awareness, guides, has committed to truth, listens deeply, supportive and encouraging, faces fears and knows death, humble, seeks mentorship, reflective, peaceful, and grounded, observes beyond what is seen with the eyes, and responds instead of reacting. I mean, like, find me that and find me that now, right? Like, we all want that, you know, especially because I know our community is very woman dominant. Like, we love that energy. That doesn't always come through though, right? So here's the wounded masculine. Aggressive, stuck in mind, not present, cold and distant, competitive, withdrawn, bullying, struggles to communicate needs, has to be right, reactive, withdraws, runs from love, narcissistic, needs to fix, afraid of failure, ignores emotions. Now, we'll talk about in our mentorship program how these interact with each other, meaning like if you're with someone who presents as wounded masculine or even wounded feminine, there is ways you can shift that dynamic by moving through this quadrant, by the way. So let's talk healthy feminine real quick. Intuitive, trusts self, loving, playful, expressive, fluid, heart-centered, surrenders, connecting, births, manifests, and creates, vulnerable, compassionate, sensual, and affectionate, vibrates with energy of nature, connected to source, authentic, and grounded. I don't know about you guys, but when I first heard this list, I was like, oh my God, like I would like, that sounds so nice. That's exactly who I want to be. It's not who I always am, but those are things that are really attractive to me because again, at my core, like I am feminine, and healthy feminine is where I lean towards. Wounded feminine, irrational, desperate, needy, manipulative, insecure, seeks external validation, inauthentic, chases love or obsesses, victim, critical, people pleasing, projects emotions onto others, lack of boundaries, insecurely attached, fears loss, and seeks safety externally. So, I mean, a lot to digest there and a lot to process there, but I know we're kind of almost at time. I'm going to get you guys out of here, hopefully within a few minutes over, since we started a couple of minutes late, but just taking a look at this list, seeing kind of what sticks out to you, or even anything that brings up things for you, just to consider how that affects your internal systems and like what triggers you or what sets you off of how you interact with relationship and what energies you tend to normally operate out of, and not from a place of being wrong, just an observation. Okay, so here, this is the big one. You will always attract exactly the frequency that you are vibrating at. Tough one to swallow, I know. If nothing is showing up, meaning you're wanting to date and you're looking, and you're like, there's no one. How can you be curious about yourself and what you're protecting? Okay. If something you don't like is showing up, what can it teach you? Like, what's up, core wounds? I see you deeply. Let me lean into the nurturing feminine for myself on this. Be that for me. So guys, we're going to be going through all of these again in our mentorship program starting May 11th. The person who developed this content, she is an amazing psychotherapist, marriage family therapist. Her name is Danae Logan. She's going to be a guest speaker for our mentorship program, which I'm super excited about. And we have an entire section, an entire month long of study on the polarity of masculine and feminine dynamics and intimate relationships. So we would so love to have you guys there. These are the topics. There's also inherited beliefs, like that's where you'll investigate core wounds and all that kind of yummy stuff, where you can just get to know yourself more in a safe space. Romantic relationship, and then emotional intelligence is the next pillar, and that's we just did this in our leadership business training, and there's some really great stuff we have for you guys, new content that's never been presented before like that. And then we'll have guest speakers on all of our topics to give us support and more information about, just how to understand ourselves more. That's always what it's about. It's just about growth. It's about getting bigger, better, and more open-hearted in everything we do. So thank you guys for being here with me for this hour. I hope you got some good notes. The recording will be available on our membership forum. Again, make sure that you download our app, because under the personal development section, you'll have access to everything. And if you're watching this recording, thank you for tuning in, and we'd love to see you guys on mentorship. I'll see you soon. Oh, and not to mention, by the way, we have another webinar on the 9th, I believe. I have to double check, but I think it's on the 9th, and that one's on emotional intelligence too. So you'll get kind of a preview of everything we're going to do there as well. See you guys soon.